Awesome.
Outstanding. Good afternoon, everyone. This is Ed DeVoe, president of the New Jersey Cannabis Business Association. Welcome to Lunch and Learn. What a timely Lunch and Learn we have today. But before we get started, I'll give everyone a moment to settle in. And I'm going to look over my notes really quick, and then we will get started momentarily. Thank you for joining us. Excellent. Without any further ado, once again, everyone, I'm Ed DeVoe. I'm president of the New Jersey Cannabis Business Association. Welcome to Lunch and Learn. So glad that everyone could join me. Hopefully you are enjoying your green, regardless of what kind of green it is. I want to welcome our special guest today, Todd Polyniak. But before we get to Todd, with that outstanding blazer, man, I'm loving it. That is so cool. I do want to thank our sponsors, Proteus 420, Financial Resources Federal Credit Union, Sax LLP, Burton Trent Public Affairs, Pureleaf, Garden State Green Energy, Dutchy, Puffin Entrepreneurs and Investors, and Sprague Energy, our preferred energy partner. And also, Todd, before we get to you, I do want to remind everyone of our upcoming event, April 12th. April 12th, we are having an outstanding seminar, an outstanding cast of special guests and conversations around what it will take. You are getting your license, and so you need to know what to do financially, physically, infrastructure-wise, talking about marketing and branding. All of this is going to be part of this conversation on April 12th. Be sure to sign up. Be sure to sign up. You want to make sure you get your space. So thank you so much for your consideration for that. And now, after thanking our sponsors and reminding everyone about April 12th, I do want to welcome our guest, Todd Polyniak of Sax LLP. Again, I love that blazer, man. I got to get one.
I'll get you one, Ed.
I'm sure you have one of my socks.
For your birthday. So your birthday's coming up in a couple of months. So.
Oh, that's great. Well, I do want to welcome everyone once again. And so, Todd, again, maybe it's luck of the Irish that we have you, because today the conversation really is about what's happening in the financial world and how it relates potentially to the cannabis industry. So why don't we start there? Give us some background. What's happening with the banks?
So, I mean, most people at this point, Ed, know about what happened with Silicon Valley Bank. It's been in the news. It's an interesting story because it's the first big bank failure since 2008. I know that you were around in 2008. I was around in 2008. And if we think about it, those were pretty ominous times, because who would ever thought a company the size of Lehman Brothers or Bear Stearns and all the, Merrill Lynch, all these different banking institutions started to fold one after the other. And if it wasn't for the bailout that the government did, I don't know where the world would be today. So you have this bank, and if you follow the story, to read about the story, they were mainly servicing the VC sector, the tech sector. They were the go-to bank. They really didn't have a whole lot of cannabis clients. In fact, I don't think they had any. They were servicing some ancillary clients, but they were taking in a lot of money in actual deposits. I think in my notes I said somewhere around, in between 2019 to 2021, their deposits went from 60 billion to 190 billion. So think about the growth in such a short period of time. And then what they did was they started to buy long-term bonds with an average duration of 10 years with an interest rate of 1.63%. back then, remember, interest rates just have jumped considerably since they put all their money in the bonds, and then the interest rates changed. It was difficult for them to offer customers who wanted to put money in money market accounts that 4% interest rate. So they started to experience the problem that many banks are experiencing, which is the demand to deposit and the return moves you out of that space. Long story short, they were seeing some problems. They announced a capital raise. They weren't able to execute, and some of the investors were private equity companies who told their companies to start pulling the money out. So you did actually see a run on the bank. And I think that what happened was that Silicon Valley actually started selling their securities, their long-term securities, $21 billion worth, and they absorbed a $1.8 billion loss in order to meet those customer demands. So that bank obviously has been taken over by the FDIC. And then you started hearing other stories, Ed, about other banks like Signature Bank, and I won't name all the banks because I don't want to, do that. But so what's going on here? Is this another 2008, or is this an anomaly? Well, I would say that we're going to have to wait and see. I think that's the best thing to do, is to wait and see. If you read different narratives from people in the space, some people, there was an article out this morning, some people are saying, don't worry, this is not going to affect cannabis at all. And then other people are saying, yes, be concerned. It's really a matter of opinion because we don't have enough information right now. But if you were to ask me, what should our clients be doing, whether they're in cannabis or not, there's a few things, and I'll kind of address it mainly to the cannabis client base out there and people who are servicing cannabis. You should be getting some type of information from your banks in response to what's happening. There are very few banks, you and I both know, Ed, that actually allow for cannabis to begin with. Can you imagine if those banks started having this similar problems? Maybe they won't because of the type of banks they are, but where would you put your money? So if you're not hearing from your bank right now, if no one sent you an email to let you know that there's no problem, you should at least be following up and perhaps be a little bit concerned. That would be my first point. And second point in all of this mess is that while the banks that were quote unquote quote failing weren't failing because of cannabis, what you're going to find is this: whenever there is a disruption in the economy, Ed, what happens is that people who would normally invest in cannabis, they hold on to their money, right? And I know already from talking to clients and even myself, I mean, are you willing now to risk your cash if you don't know about, if you have an uncertainty about the economy? So you're going to now, it's going to become even more difficult to raise capital. You need to be speaking to your investors, even more so, the potential investors, demonstrating why you're a better bet than even putting their money in the bank, so to speak, that you have the right people so that you are going to be successful. So money's going to be tight. People are a little bit scared because of what's happening. And is this really 2008 all over? I don't know. I mean, if you know what's happening with Silicon Valley, it looks like they're going to not just back the $250,000, but the government's going to back all the deposits. That sounds a little bit to me like 2008, if you remember. So I'm hoping that this is just a hiccup. But I tell people, stay calm, carry on, and hey, it's St. Patrick's Day, so we need to celebrate. So that's a little bit from the financial side of the world, the whole banking issue, from my perspective, and it's my opinion. What do you think, Ed? I'd like to know what your opinion, although it's supposed to be me as your guest. What do you think, and what have you been hearing from people?
You know, it's interesting. I do recall 2008 quite vividly. In fact, when we looked at the economy then, it just wasn't the banks. We were talking about the automotive industry,
Yep.
and having that occur at the same time. So it was almost like this perfect storm at the beginning of the Obama administration. And look, whether you agreed with his election, whether you agreed with or supported him or not, what I think his administration did by bailing out the banks and by bailing out the automotive industry really staved off a catastrophic event in the country. So I look at this, and while it reminds me of 2008, I do think, and you're the expert, I do think that this is quite, it's a pinpoint in terms of the industry, that this is a microcosm, maybe. Now, could we use it as a forecast? Is this a way of forecasting some potential danger down the road? I think we do have to look at it that way. More importantly, for our guests, the viewing audience, as we look at banks, and while we don't have a lot to choose from in the grand scheme of things, what should people be looking for in a bank? What are the types of questions that whether a cultivator or manufacturer or retailer, somebody who's getting in the industry, how do I interview a bank? Because they're going to interview me. How do I interview them?
That's such a great question. I mean, I think, Ed, there's some thoughts is that I would want that bank to explain to me what their financial strength is, because if I'm going to put my deposits with a bank, although I don't want it to be that they think that they're doing me a favor, though sometimes banks seem to be saying that, I want to know that I have a bank that I can bank with for the long term, not that I'm going to need to pull my money out. Also, that I want a bank who's progressive enough to know that when the Safe Banking Act does get passed, they're going to be first in line to maybe remove some other restrictions, right? Even the banks that are taking the cannabis money, they're not really free in lending money out. I mean, they may do some real estate, but even then it's really tough. I want to know someone who's going to be just like, when you interview your attorney or your CPA, you want someone who's going to be with you in the long term. Are they in it or are they not in it? I mean, Ed, there are quite a few people, you and I both know, who are posers, all right? They're in the industry, but they're not really in the industry. They're kind of, are you really in this or not? I say to my clients, I want to be in this with you until you exit the cannabis industry, if you ever do. I would want that the same from the bank. And are they going to treat me as a second-class citizen because I do cannabis? Are they going to treat me as like all those people? So those are just some very high-level questions I would ask, besides the common ones about service, etc., and fees. So what's your thoughts? What do you think about banking?
So it's, again, the access to capital. I'll start there. Access to capital for our industry is somewhat limited. And clearly, if you are from a community that has historically been challenged to enter and get financial resources, communities of color, it's even more challenging. I'm presuming that now you're in the cannabis industry, people are still dealing with the stigma of you being in that industry. So your options are somewhat limited. I do think that here at the Cannabis Business Association, we do have great banking relationships.
I agree.
For the few banks that are out there, a couple have honed in on us, and they see value in us, and they are willing to promote their products. Our sponsor, Financial Resources Federal Credit Union.
Yep.
I think in terms of, to your point about interviewing them and asking questions, I think it's a great thing to ask the staff at Financial Resources Federal Credit Union, tell us about your history. By the way, they do have a very interesting history, how they began as the credit union for Johnson & Johnson, and how they have evolved. I know Frank Almeida, the president, has
Uh-huh.
been with us, and hopefully we have him on again this year and fairly soon. But interesting history. So I think asking the questions, finding out about your institution, your potential institution, and maybe it's a good thing that you don't have too many choices, right? Because that could be confusing too,
That's true.
right?
That's true, my friend.
But I do think the ones that are making a play in New Jersey, in particular, those banking institutions that are working with us at the Canada Business Association, they are stand-up organizations.
Agreed.
So from your perspective now, you're the nuts and bolts of what's going to happen with my Canna business. I'm doing, you're looking at my banking, presumably. So what are some of the things that I want to make sure that I do put out there? I mean, we talk about full disclosure, but what are some of those hot points that I want to make sure that my bank looks at, that you look at? What are those types of things? Do you have a checklist for the bank and the client?
So we talking about, and just clarify your question, what the bank might be wanting to know about my clients, or is that the
Let's look at it that way. What does a bank want to know? And then what do you advise people as in terms of what to share?
So yeah, the bank is definitely going to ask for a whole lot of information, especially if you're a cannabis company, right? They want to make sure that you're not doing some type of money laundering. So again, being fully transparent about the purpose of your business, uh, why you're banking with them. I mean, Ed, you know, I know that banks, since they're taking a risk, they're going to charge higher fees on this. There's a whole different process that they're going to go through. I would say that it's really helpful for people in the cannabis space to be upfront and honest with the bankers to begin with. Let them know if there are any issues or problems. They're going to check. Banks are going to typically check if they're smart, your background. They're going to want to know that you are a person of integrity, especially since the banks that are in this and are generally, they are kind of taking a stand that many banks, many of the big banks, even some of the smaller banks, don't want to get involved in. So I would say having a upfront conversation with my banker, providing all the information that they're requiring is what I would start with. Then I would say that in knowing that you have a bank that possibly could in the future, when the rules change, be supportive of lending money to you, that would be a question I would want to know from the bank. I mean, again, I played a long game, you played a long game. I would want my bank to be with me until I exit the cannabis industry, or at least have another viable option if that's not the case. And it's relationship based, isn't it, Ed? So I would want to know who my banker is. Who is the person I'm interfacing with? If it's going to be a call number and I'm not going to know the person on the other side, I'm going to have a problem with that. So I'm not a banker, but just based upon my conversations with my clients and myself, my own business, that's what I would expect.
That's great to hear. You mentioned you dropped a word earlier, and when we talk about posers, and when we want our members and people in the industry to be safe, the investors, right? You have people out there that are now kind of circling, saying, "Oh yes, I've got capital, and I'm doing things that are that are here to help. I'm here to help, right? I'm here to write a
Yeah.
check." So
Uh,
what do we look
wow.
for with investors,
Oh
right?
yeah, love that question. That's a good question. So yeah, let's start with investors. You do know that we were both taught young by our parents that you shouldn't talk to strangers. Well, we have to talk to strangers when we're trying to raise capital, right? But it would be great. Why is it? Let me ask you this, Ed. Why is it that we always are asked to give references about ourselves. I saying cannabis companies, cannabis operators. Why are we always required to give give me a reference about you? Why don't we ask for references from the investors? Who have they done business with before, and talk to them? Because I am concerned that when people start getting to the wire and they need the capital, that they might start taking capital from people that in the end are going to harm or at least be unfair with those owners. I would want to know who they've done business with. I want to know how long, and what would be important to me, Ed, I don't know if it'd be important to anyone else, is where is their money coming from? Wouldn't you want to know where their money is coming from? You're not going to see a lot of money flowing from venture capital funds now. It's going to be coming from private funds, but I still want to know, where's that money coming from? And then, are the terms they're offering me, Ed, are they fair or are they not fair compared to what other people are offering? Don't pick the first investor, and also consult your professionals, consult your CPAs, consult your attorneys, consult the people that are business people and say, does this make sense to you? Don't just take don't take what seems to be attractive, but really is a Venus flytrap. How's that? I want you to picture a Venus flytrap where it really looks cozy, and then you get in, you take the money in, you're dead. I know I'm being a little bit dramatic today.
No, Todd, I think that's right on point. And at the Canna Business Association, we talk about the seriousness of the industry, the seriousness of business. I've used the phrase recently, we're moving from culture to commerce. Whereas one time, I would dare say, as part of the cannabis culture, very trusting, very easygoing. There was not a need to be serious. Now we're talking about a real need to be serious. To your point, and I love what was just in the chat about echoing relationships. It really is about building relationships, getting to know your financial institution. To your point, if you're an investor and you're showing up at networking events and you're saying, well, I'm an investor, it's going to take time for me to get to trust you and to get to know you. And I really like your word of advice there about not taking the first hit that you get. Interview a couple of investment organizations. Really do a deep dive into the individuals that are presenting themselves as investors. What do you represent? Where are you from? Right? I should see your resume just as easily as you see mine. Right? Hopefully I'm not going too far afield here.
No, this is good. This is good. That's what I recommend to my clients and also people that I'm working closely with.
So in terms of now, let's take more of an internal look. So I am the cannabis business. I'm the operator. Maybe it's not the investor part, but maybe it's the partner piece. Are there financial kind of flares or signals that I should look for with a potential partner? Again, not necessarily an investor, looking at the investor as kind of this third party that swoops in, but somebody that's actually wanting to take me to the altar, right? They want to be married with me going into this. Are there some financial or other types of red flags that, from your standpoint, what do you think?
Yes, so I mean, I'm going to give you a few that just come to top of mind, and we can spend another hour just talking about it. So if I'm a partner, I'm going to want to look at the potential company. I want to look at their pro formas. I want to look at their numbers. Remember, these are the business plan is reflecting something that is a future. Hopefully it's not just a hope, there's some credibility behind it, Ed, but there are certain things that I see when I look at pitch decks, when I look at business plans that would cause me to be concerned. I'm going to give you just a few, just off the top of my head, few. One is the numbers really don't seem to make any sense. They seem to be very optimistic. And remember, cannabis is highly taxed because of 280E. One thing that is common, I don't understand why, but people don't really factor in fully 280E. They take a very, optimistic viewpoint of 280E, like they're going to be able to somehow skirt it. Folks, you heard me say this, you've heard other CPAs. It's not a matter of if you'll be audited by the IRS, it's a matter of when. Yes, you can do all the tricks, do everything you want, my friends, but when you finally get audited, that's when everything gets uncovered and they're going to say, prove to me why you were able to take those deductions. So if in the deck, they haven't really factored in a conservative way 280E, I'm going to be concerned about that. The other real concern of mine is when they're overly optimistic on their gross margins after 280E. So people say, well, what should it be? What should it be? I don't know what it should be. We're operating in an industry in New Jersey that's not fully up and running. If you want to go to other states, I can tell you what some people are telling me, but your gross margin is going to be a factor of your cost and your revenue. And cost, especially depending on whether you're a cultivation, manufacturer, or retailer, is determined based upon whatever that product is. That cost can go dramatically up or dramatically down and have a total impact on gross margin. But if those numbers I'm looking at, they say those gross margins are just, they're insane, okay? I'm not going to trust that you don't have the right nuts and bolts. And then the third is, who actually put together these numbers? I suggest, and yes, it may sound self-serving, but you should have a cannabis CPA or a reputable firm looking at the numbers, even if you compile them, just to do some type of fact-checking. When investors look at a deck, Ed, and they know that it's been backed by a cannabis CPA, a firm, and not just developed from someone reading the MJ Biz magazine, the annual one that's coming out, and say, oh, this is what we should use. It does add credibility. And what I would say is in the deck, I would actually make reference that part of our team is this firm, this firm, this firm, or this individual, so that the investor knows or the partner knows it's not just something that someone made up. Because here's an old saying, my friend, if you torture the numbers enough, they'll tell you whatever you want. So you need to have somebody who can stand behind those numbers and explain it to people and say, this is why this makes sense. This is how you investor or you partner are going to get paid off based upon the trend. So those are just very quickly some items. We can go into more depth.
That's excellent guidance, and I'm sure our viewers are appreciating that. As we again, this is kind of crunch time for us, right? Ooh. This year
is it, man.
This is it. This is the year. This is when you're going to watch businesses stand up. This is when you're going to watch these businesses. This is it. How you look tomorrow is how you're going to look for years to come.
Absolutely.
So it's interesting. So we have a comment. This is utilities, right? Accounting for utility costs. I'm sure that's critical, especially when we're looking at cultivation and processing.
Yeah.
Why people like Sprague Energy are so important in this conversation. You can't forget water, power. These are things that are part of that consideration when you're putting together that pro forma.
Yep, absolutely. And I guess what I will add, and this is just as a thought based upon what was just said. When you're looking at a site to build, if it's cultivation, and there's very few, right? You're going to want to have someone tell you whether or not that site is going to be able to take on the energy necessary to do a grow. Can you imagine spending a few $1 million for a site and then having someone tell you later, well, there's no way you're going to get enough energy into that site to grow what you want to grow? So some of this due diligence, I'm a little bit concerned that sometimes we're rushing to get things done, and obviously we do because we have a deadline. think high level. What are the critical things that you need to consider before you sign the lease or buy a property? Don't be so pressured because there's so few sites, and then later on be very disappointed that your gross margins are going to be much less because you can't even service that project with the capacity that it has. And I'm not an engineer. I don't know anything about energy except what my bill is every month and the fact that it keeps going up. But so that's another thought too, is look at the areas that are critical before you start signing the checks over and buying or leasing the properties.
That's a perfect segue into why people should be signing up for our April 12th event.
Absolutely.
You got to be there. This is the type of information you're going to be sitting in the room with people that are construction experts, people that are financial experts, banking experts. They're going to be there because, as the title says, getting your license, now what? So those are some of the things. So Todd, I thank you for that, because that really does hit home with respect to why we have these events. You got to be there April 12th. So Todd Polyniak, again, I just want to thank you for your time today. That was brilliant information with respect to the banking. I won't call it a crisis, but at least the banking wake up.
Yeah, it's you know what, it's not a crisis. We need to make sure people don't panic, Ed, but it is something that we need to pay attention to. It's not good to stay in bed if you hear a loud noise. You may want to check and make sure that someone didn't enter in through the window or the back door. But you don't have to panic, right? You don't have to fall down the stairs to try to get there. Be calm and carry on. And always do it with a smile on your face, because it is cannabis.
Absolutely. So again, Todd Polyniak, thank you so much from Sax LLP. I want to once again thank our sponsors, Proteus 420, Financial Resources Federal Credit Union, Sax LLP, Burton Trent Public Affairs, Curaleaf, Garden State Green Energy, Dutchy, Puffin Entrepreneurs and Investors, and Sprague Energy, our preferred energy partner. So if you're interested in being a member of the New Jersey Cannabis Business Association, becoming a sponsor, getting a lunch and learn, contact Jenna Ray Russo, our Deputy Executive Director, and also make sure that you sign up for April 12th. Information like Todd just shared will be in abundance on that day, covering a number of different subject matter areas. You got to be there. If you've got your license, or if you're getting your license, planning on getting your license, you got to check it out. Critical. It's critical to your success. That's what we are about at the New Jersey Cannabis Business Association. We want you to be successful. With that, happy St. Patrick's Day. Enjoy your green, whether it's your green beer, your lettuce, yeah, double entendre, whatever green you're enjoying today, do so safely. Again, I want to thank Todd Polyniak from Sax LLP for those words of wisdom. Todd, again, appreciate you so much, man.
My pleasure. And send me your jacket size so I can get you one of these for your birthday.
Outstanding. So everyone, thanks again for joining us. We look forward to seeing you on April 12th. We will have not a lunch and learn next week, but the following week. So visit our website, make sure that you check out our coming events. See you on April 12th for sure. Everyone, thank you. Happy St. Patrick's Day. Have a safe weekend.
Thank you, Ed. Take care, folks.
Thank you.
Bye now.